This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So more text messages and tweets and smoke signals and pigeons delivering rolled up paper messages like Game of Thrones on Barack Obama Day.
Oh, yeah.
Reactions, how are you going to celebrate it next August 4th now that it's been officially installed?
Have they picked out a color scheme for the day? Because you know how like they associate things. Will there be flags that will be handed out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know.
There'll be a hammer and sickle on them. BO Day text, Barack Obama Day gives new meaning to throwing some dogs on the grill.
Oh.
Not to be outdone, Steve on 88. Is it too late to rename Barack Obama Day Dogapalooza?
Oh, come on.
What?
You guys are so bad.
He likes dog meat.
Okay.
Didn't you ever listen to the audiobook? He reads it. Talks about having dog meat. It's tough, but...
A little gamey, like venison.
It's like chicken, except tougher.
Oh, stop.
All right, we'll continue taking your calls and texts on Barack Obama Day, but we have to get to more important business that's prospective in nature. Kellyanne Conway on with Clinton Foundation donor Zero over the weekend talking about this New York Times report, 75 Republicans, all unnamed, of course, probably 37 and a half conversations with McCain and Lindsey Graham constitute the 75. But is there a shadow GOP campaign going on to replace Trump in 2020 or before? Because, of course, the other talk of the town is he on his way to impeachment without any basis in evidence or logic to support that question or the contention that he is. But here's Kellyanne Conway responding.
The president says privately and publicly often, George, that he'll be there for 7.5 more years. So he plans on being a two-term president. I read that article, and I want to say a few things about it. First of all, I think that in the Republican Party for many decades, we've suffered from what I call staph infection. People who are rewarded for losses. Most of the people quoted, most of the people involved, I'm sure, have never won a national political campaign like the one I was involved in or you were involved in years ago. Number two, they need a full employment act in Republican consultancy. Some of them are still not supporting their party and their party's main points of view on tax reform and health reform, on putting ISIS in retreat, if not full defeat. And I want to make a remark about Vice President Pence. I've worked with him for 10 years as his pollster, as a senior advisor, and certainly work with him daily in the White House. It is absolutely true that the vice president is getting ready for 2020 for re-election as vice president.
So no concern he's setting up a shadow campaign?
And he's also getting ready for 2018. Zero concern. That is complete fiction. That is complete fabrication.
Yeah, and Kellyanne Conway, who was an operative, as she mentioned, for a long time prior to her role as a presidential counselor, she knows of what she speaks, and as somebody who's been an operative in that world, too, and sort of still is in some fashion, I think she's onto something that's under-discussed within Republican circles, at least publicly, and that is the power of the consultancy class, in addition to the lobbyists, in addition to big interests that are rent seekers. The political operative class being rewarded for losing, the operatives controlling the polls or certainly influencing them is an important piece of this larger conversation about draining the swamp. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Matt Schlapp. He is the chairman of the American Conservative Union, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Matt, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, great to be with you guys.
How did you react to Kellyanne Conway's response to the New York Times story, and in particular her singling out the political consultancy class?
Yeah, well, I was on that show right after that interview and was able to watch it live, and I think she's right. I think that I certainly, as someone who has operated around that field, have been amazed about how the people that make bad predictions, wrong predictions, give candidates terrible advice, cycle after cycle, are the ones running most of the Republican-friendly groups and the ones who get called on by many times people in the media to say, hey, what's going on politically? It's like it's a strange thing. It's kind of, guess why we all like sports, because, if a coach starts doing badly, it's inevitable he or she is going to get fired. Mm-hmm. And in politics, if a coach does badly, it's the teammate's fault, and they just go to a different network or a different candidate.
Yes,
but
so it's a little strange.
Yeah, but don't you have to admit? I mean, Vice President Mike Pence is probably the busiest vice president in our nation's history. Don't you agree? I mean, he's not just attending funerals. He seems like he's out campaigning. He's always out there, promoting Trump's agenda.
Yeah, I don't agree in the sense of this. I agree with you that he's really busy. I don't agree having played a big role with Vice President Cheney as the political director of the White House. I helped him with his schedule, and he was incredibly busy. He did literally hundreds of events for congressional candidates. The big difference is he was a little further along in his career. Nobody anticipated that he was even considering the idea of running for office, and he said publicly he had no desire to ever run for office. So those stories never really materialized. When you have a younger vice president who's energetic and dynamic and aggressive, people immediately assume, aha, he's going to try to put Trump out of the way. And that's just it's a farce. He's doing exactly what he needs to do. He needs to get out there and do these party events, do these events for members of Congress, and raise as much money as he possibly can.
Would you say that the most accomplished vice president in U.S. history, because he cured cancer, was Joe Biden? Would you agree with that?
Still working on it, Dan.
And the most qualified, the most amazing nominee would be Al Gore, because he invented the internet and global warming.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Both of those.
That's right. And he's almost willing to convert to Catholicism because of Pope Francis, as James Woods tweeted out. Al Gore would convert to being a pug for the right amount of money. Let me switch gears for a second here. I mean, you're chairman of the American Conservative Union. This is formerly David Keene, who went on to the NRA. And I mean, these are conservative intellectual types. These are people, I would think, like myself, who say, I'm a conservative by choice, I'm a Republican by necessity. So give us your sense of the state of the conservative movement within the Republican Party in the Trump era.
Well, the conservative movement, by and large, is the Republican Party. I mean, it's the heart and soul of the party. It's what animates it. It gives it its energy. It's overwhelmingly in the majority, and it was overwhelmingly disillusioned by that political class we talked about earlier, and by the manual that Republicans were told to follow when you get to the Senate. Tell people you're going to be pro-life, but we're really not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Tell people that you want to get rid of the IRS and pull it out by its roots, but, really, we're never going to actually get rid of the income tax. Tell people that you're a pro-gun. Tell people that you don't think we need to have all these international entanglements, but, don't really do anything to kind of put the clamps on the UN or make these people pay up. And free trade, I think, was kind of the classic one. We all ran around talking about free trade while people in the Republican Party supported agreements that really weren't free in any way. There was no reciprocity in the countries who we were signing these agreements with. So, the American manufacturer was kind of was the victim in all of that. So if you take all those issues and put it together, I just think it's conservatives, in a way, letting the Republicans know we are not happy with these results, just like we had the sports analogy earlier. We're not winning enough. We're not winning these battles, and don't think that we're so silly and stupid that we're falling for all your talking points. You know what? This vote on Obamacare was really the most cynical example of it. You had every Republican go around this country, every single one, for 7 years saying that they were going to vote to repeal Obamacare, and you literally had 6 of the 7 senators who voted to repeal it in 2015 switch their vote because they knew it would actually become law this time and it would be repealed. And they didn't want that because that would mean a few less people would get Medicaid.
Well, what happened with Senator John McCain? I mean, why?
What did you say?
What happened with Senator John McCain? John
McCain would do anything, as far as I'm concerned, he'll do anything to garner good press for himself, to be the guy standing up against his party. He literally got out of his sickbed, which I do pray for his recovery. I'm sorry that he's having to battle this cancerous tumor, but he got out of his sickbed to come and screw the party and to put the party in a vulnerable position with its supporters across this country, because the party, I think, is in a very, very difficult spot. If they don't do something on Obamacare, I think there's going to be even more realignment, and we'll have even more candidates like Trump.
Well, and the other thing, too, is the Trump administration needs to fill out the Trump administration. I mean, if personnel is policy, then he's put together a pretty impressive cabinet, generally speaking. The Gorsuch nomination and confirmation, that was great, and some of those federal judicial appointments and rewinding, or unwinding, I should say, the regulatory state, the progress there. But in terms of removing John Koskinen, you mentioned the weaponized IRS. John Koskinen still IRS commissioner. Why? The deputies and other senior level personnel in these agencies, the fight to extract Obama loyalists from intelligence agencies between Bannon and McMaster, apparently. I mean, these are things that need to be resolved in short order. These are kind of first 6 month, first year problems that need to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I have been very publicly, critical of the slow pace of which the administration has made these selections. I think the West Wing was not set up to be as functional as it should be. You want disagreements, but they seem to get into gridlock in the West Wing. And when you're in gridlock in the West Wing, what's going to happen when you got to face the Democrats? So you're right. They've never gotten control of the bureaucracy, of the swamp of these agencies. And that's why they're leaking, because they feel like no one's managing them. The good news is that we got literally dozens of people confirmed this month in the Senate. They did get a type of an agreement on nominations. We have, at Treasury, which you bring up the IRS, at Treasury, we literally haven't really had anybody there except Mnuchin. And they got several key assistant secretaries and undersecretaries confirmed. So I think as the year goes on, it'll get better, but they got to an awfully late start. They'll never get the time back, but the good news is that it's getting fixed.
Yeah, a lot on General Kelly's plate, as well as the president, of course. He is Matt Schlapp. Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Matt, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
You too.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.